Good to hear.
Yeah.
Check, check.
Check, check. Final keynote. Closing keynote. Pulling strings together. Everyone had fun so far?
You're still awake? Are you awake?
Are you awake?
Are you awake?
Yeah.
Because it's so dark here inside, no sunlight. But good that you're following. So let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, definitely. So we are the authors of the Biohacker's Handbook. And this book is 500 pages or 1,500 references, hundreds of illustrations, or 5 years of work that we put together. So I'm the technology expert and curator of Biohacker Summit. And Jaakko Halmetoja is our nutrition specialist. And Olli is our medical doctor. And we all kind of dive deep into years ago on how to optimize your exercise, nutrition, sleep, and mind, as well as work with biological and technological tools. It's kind of the Bible of biohacking. But the things that we really want to talk about today is kind of getting from all the presentations that we have seen in the last 2 days, kind of what inspires us. We've been browsing through the exhibition. We've been talking to people in the audience. We've been watching the presentations. And this presentation has been made today on lunch just to kind of pull certain strings together. But when it comes to biohacking, we all have our own idols that we look and cherish up to. Either it's Ben Greenfield, or it's, you know, some doctor who's done great things when it comes to deep understanding of human physiology and biology and sharing all the knowledge and information. So we all have, you know, our role models that we relate to. So I would love to, you know, ask, for example, Jaakko, what's your favorite biohacker?
I think a good archetype, at least for me as a lifelong martial artist, is Bruce Lee. I first got fascinated by him. I think I had to do a presentation on 7th grade or something, and I really geeked into the philosophy and all the things that this guy did. And I think he's a nice kind of combination of deep philosophy, body, mind, spirit, kind of putting it all together and experimenting with different tools. So that would be my pick.
So how about Olli? Who's your favorite?
Well, due to my language, as Ben Greenfield told me, you talk like Yoda. Do or do not, there's no try. So definitely him, the ultimate biohacker. Or is he really?
So for me, I mean, when I was listening to Ben Greenfield's talk and he was giving out all those, you know, freaks of nature, things like lobsters and how amazing they are in terms of longevity, I noticed that there was one entity, the ultimate biohacker, that is invisible, that is everywhere on this planet, which I think is, you know, something we can really look up to. And if you go to any forest and you look at the forest grounds, and what do you find there? You find this animal, tardigrade. It's the water bear. It's a pretty amazing creature. It has been on this planet for, you know, thousands and thousands of years. And if you look at what kind of properties it has developed to be able to adapt to its environment and to be resilient, let's go through, you know, some features of a tardigrade. So, for example, if you look into the deep oceans, tardigrades can survive in the ocean floor down to 4.7 kilometers. So it can sustain extreme pressure. Now, if you look at high in the mountains, tardigrade has a vacation on top of Mount Everest. It has been found on the top of Mount Everest as well. Now, if you look at in space, a tardigrade can withstand 1,000 times atmospheric pressure. So it can survive in space as well. Now, if you look at, you know, nuclear radiation, tardigrade can withstand toxins and 1,000 times the radiation of 6,200 gauge, what is the exact number? Anyway, GE. So if you look into, you know, volcanoes and extreme heat, a tardigrade can survive in 151 Celsius degrees. And if you look into Sahara, it can survive without water for 120 years. Wim Hof, one of those people we look up to in the biohacking community in terms of extreme feats that he's been able to do with cold. He also ran through Sahara, so he's kind of close to a tardigrade. Looking at how tardigrade competes against Wim Hof in extreme temperatures, tardigrade can survive in minus 273 Celsius. And so tardigrade can go to space. It's pretty much the ultimate biohacker, and definitely through evolution it has been able to adapt and protect itself. So it can kind of get itself into this shell, which enables it to be able to adapt to the environment, wait for the right condition to happen so that it can once again open up its shell and start proliferating again. So that's what came to my mind about tardigrades. We have had a lot of insights in this conference. What insights did you, Jaakko, have?
I was actually thinking about that. There is a term called extremophiles, so organisms that can adapt to very, very difficult environments. And I think as a biohacking community, there is something to be said that people want to build up resilience, build up ability to adapt to different environment, different stressful situations, all that. So I think underlying tools all are aimed to kind of build that adaptability into us. So I think that's a reoccurring theme around all of the tools that people were talking about.
Insight as a word, insight, looking inside, brings to my mind the quote from Chuang Tzu. If you have insight, you use your inner eye, your inner ear to pierce to the heart of things and to have no need, then you have no need for intellectual knowledge. I think that's kind of tells a lot about biohacking.
Basically, you have all the answers inside. It's good to have information, but you get something into your system, but you also have everything inside of yourself if you develop your intuition.
Information, something is in form. I had a chat with Ben Greenfield's dad, and he brought this fact that a lot of things have information. Information is primary. It's not DNA. It copies forward. We live forever. The code gets passed on to next generations. Epigenetic change happens so that this organism can adapt and become like a tardigrade. Now, many things that we do nowadays in health and well-being and our society in general are not based on information. They're based on malformation. So they're out of context. They're based on extreme reductionist logic where we take one thing out of the whole totality, holistic totality of how things work, and we isolate one variable like vitamin C, and then we do it in excess without really seeing that an orange is not vitamin C, but there's hundreds of different compounds, and many of them for which we don't yet understand the full properties of them. So they did a lot of studies on antioxidants, for example, and they discovered that in some cases, excess amounts of antioxidants can actually damage. They can make cancer cells survive longer.
So from there we go into homeostasis, finding the balance, what's the right balance. Too much oxidative stress is detrimental, but too much antioxidants is detrimental. Definitely if we take too much drugs, that could be detrimental, but also the same thing with supplements, herbs, different kind of foods. So it's always finding the right balance for your system.
It's a reductionist logic.
Yeah, and I think that you don't find studies from whole foods that you can overdose antioxidants because they work in a kind of reaction chains. So of course, if you take just one part, you're kind of diluting it to be much stronger oxidants. So the whole chain doesn't work in a way that our biology works. So just one good example of kind of superficially thinking that, we can just take this out and it's like that.
I was recently listening to a conversation between Dr. Rhonda Patrick and Joe Rogan, and they were talking about diets. So there's many diets out there, and we're all kind of thinking like, what is the right one? Is the ketogenic diet? Is the paleo diet? Is the vegan diet? Is it, intermittent fasting, low fat, high carb, carb loading? What is it? But these are all abstractions as well. And people get very emotional, very enthusiastic about the specific thing, and then they extrapolate that this thing is a cure-all. This thing is gonna, be the ultimate answer. And it, culminates in people having social media accounts like Keto Joe or High Fat Brat or something like this. And they build their whole identity around a specific diet or dogma, and they start to believe it. And if someone brings evidence that shows that no, it's not necessarily a ketogenic diet that works in this case, they're almost in a rejection mode because it's part of their identity already at that point.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes those identities are formed by what you are not doing. So you're kind of anti-something and not pro-something. And psychologically, I think there is something to be said about looking at life with that type of attitude, because then you're kind of focusing on things that you don't want instead of kind of seeing opportunities and more complexity, more possibility, all that. So I think that's something to be looking into.
One word.
There has been a lot of discussion about keto in this conference. So what do you all think about keto?
Yeah, I have very stupid jokes. My humor is kind of gnarly. But I have a question for you. What does a musician who follows a ketogenic diet play? Ketones.
Ketones. That's a good
Thank
one.
you.
It's almost as good as, what does Dr. Mercola order in Germany? Mehr Cola.
Mehr Cola. Yeah. But the key point here is it's flexibility. You want to be as flexible as you can. You want to follow, you want to be in ketosis at times. You want to introduce a lot of vegetables, different wild plants. You want to play around with different kinds of diets or food sources in different phases of the year. So it's not the same what you eat during the summer or what you would eat during the winter time, because the temperature, the climate affects how your body processes different kind of foods.
There is a lot of hype now around the ketogenic diet. You can just see it in Google Trends, how many searches are done about ketogenic diet. If you try the search on keto, you see like a freaking exponential curve. So it's a trend. And you have to understand that many things come in trends. They come and go. And then there's a new word that we need to describe thousands of years old concepts that we've been doing. And in the ketogenic community, it's a lot about, eating things like meat that's on your plate. And I think Ben put it really well, that it's not only, having a lot of, lean protein and butter and all that, but you should also look for plants. Because in plants, if you look at just the bear, the national animal from Finland, they are, also eating fish and, maybe some other mammals, but they're also foraging. They're foraging for blueberries and bilberries, and here this guy is getting a dandelion.
Yeah, I'm thinking actually that around ketogenic diet, I see kind of patterns into certain minimalistic approaches to other areas of life. And I kept thinking, Chris Kilham gave a talk earlier and talked about plants and ayahuasca and all that. And in these shamanic traditions, it's pretty common that they have this dieta where you focus on single plants or single sources of nutrition to kind of get a deeper connection with what that thing actually is. So I think there's something to be said on keto diet, that I see that people kind of want to go deeper into certain direction other than this complexity of eat 100 plants and what about this phytonutrient. And so it's kind of simplifying and increasing the resolution that you can find more about yourself, kind of simplifying the options in a sense.
Yeah. And it's also a reflection into our gut microbiota. The more simple, the more simplex our diet becomes, the more simple or simplex our microbiota also comes. So you want to do a wider variety of different kind of plants and food sources. For example, our ancestor They forested around 100 different plants on different phases of the year.
And they use fermentation processes to preserve them as food. And if you're worried about, vegetables and carbohydrates and all those, monocrops that feed 60% of the world population, the top 10 crops like wheat and potatoes and soy and all that, our ancestors were foraging 100 different plants on average, depending on habitat. Like how many of you forage 100 plants in your immediate environment? So many of those are, the wild herbs are bitter tasting and they don't have a lot of like carbohydrates. But there is a lot of chemistry in there that we ignore in today's nutritional recommendations that we don't fully understand. And looking at spices, for example, there is a lot of discussion that, for example, when it comes to omega-3 oils, that vegans can't get omega-3 to omega-6 ratio because the plant-based omega-3s don't absorb as readily. Only 9% of it does. And it turns out that when they did research and studies on people in India who eat a vegetarian diet, and if they used a lot of turmeric, it increased greatly the conversion of the ALA into DHA. So they were able to get the more active forms of omega-3 oils by using certain spices. So there is many modulatory things in our environment and phytochemicals that we are ignoring in our dietary recommendations fully.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking that Jarro Willard gave talk yesterday, and he was emphasizing the fact that the information, the formation, the structure that these plants produce chemically kind of teach us. And it's a huge importance. The little tweaks in the molecules actually have a tremendous effect. And even as a bridge to psychedelics, if you look at the tryptamines, whether it was psilocybin or DMT, they're pretty similar, kind of superficially. But the small tweaks affect a lot what we learn or how we connect with those types of informations. So I think the kind of complexity in there is a key idea, that we can learn from different forms, different, for example, colors. So different chemicals present themselves in colors. So that's kind of a old world idea of mapping the world around you, that you can learn a lot of stuff by just observing and actually connecting that. What is this form, this plant form or form of leaf or the color actually telling me? And we are now kind of just observing things through our minds, just what is the chemistry, but kind of lacking the perspective. So that was one point that I took out from Jarro's talk.
So basically, you don't want to eat terms. You don't want to eat different kind of compounds. You want to introduce different kind of entities, different colors, different vibrations, different kind of origins. You want to think about food as a whole, as a living thing that is energy and information for your whole system.
That's right. One thing that I really picked up from this conference is the amount of discussion on medicinal mushrooms, also thanks to Jarro Willard. And here we can see, the number of medical literature publication on medicinal mushrooms, and there's a growing interest into these things. But the thing is that these have been used for thousands of years. In my country, chaga tea has been used during wartime as a replacement for coffee and black tea because those were scarce. And it turned out that that beverage specifically has 10 times the amount of antioxidants. It can increase your oxygen intake and resilience during stressful situations, modulates your immune system, has a lot of beneficial things that we don't necessarily get from coffee. But coffee has other properties, so I'm combining both of those.
Yeah, I think you said that earlier. Back in the days, almost a decade ago, I had a cafeteria, and what I started to play around, because I had a chaga tea boiling or decoction boiling all the time, and I served coffee for people, like doing AeroPress coffee or whatever. So I started to use the chaga tea as a base liquid for brewing this coffee, and kind of placebo trying for people, and nobody picked the difference in taste. But you can combine these types of ideas really practically, so the compliance is actually there. So I think that's one thing to be said for bulletproof coffees and all of these ideas, that you can combine ideas from different kingdoms, different realms, and actually get the data in you.
there's great mushrooms, and many of them have very subtle effects. And when some people say that something has an effect on the brain, your lights turn on. And Yarrow Willard said that lion's mane was one of the one of the specific mushrooms that people are super interested in. And there is something about these things making us intelligent, but they're making us intelligent on a level that we can't really grasp. It's not only cognitive performance; it's much deeper, much deeper kind of understanding what's going on there.
Run for your life.
Run for your life. Yeah. So we are interested in things like psilocybin because it affects our brain. And there is a hype going on, right now with psychedelics. You see, what happened in the 60s, 70s, huge interest in, psychedelic drugs and then lung suppression, and now it's kind of opening up again with research and all that. It's a new high that we are kind of getting into. And talking about new high, we can combine all of these things in new ways. This is pretty amazing nootropic PSI-VITAMIN complex from Paul Stamets. Who's Paul Stamets?
I think he's one of the most brilliant minds on the planet right now. So if you haven't seen Paul Stamets' TED Talk or TED-Med Talk, that's definitely something to write down. He's a mycologist, expert on mushrooms, all kinds of mushrooms, and has a lot of different solutions for humanity. But I think this stack is pretty interesting for neurogenesis, and kind of we also heard about the neuroplasticity and those things. So there's something to be looking after with kind of combining the medicinal mushrooms, the more psychedelic mushrooms and other compounds to actually start to build some intelligence how we can approach these certain pathways in a way that's really beneficial.
Yeah, I see there's a lot of great product design going on in the biohacking community. Like Qualia has been kind of looking at the different pathways and how to support them in a complete way. This stack, actually, the way how Paul Stamets formulated it was to design it for neurogenesis specifically, supporting it from different angles, and that's why you have these compounds in there, also cofactors that would be beneficial.
You know what? We are missing one device.
Yeah.
That's the isolator.
Yeah, we are missing the isolator still. We are putting things together what are, in that time, kind of what we are capable for. And as we go forward, suddenly we don't need an isolator. You have a, binaural beats thing. You lie on your spike mat with your red light therapy device on, and you do some EEG neurofeedback, whatever, while you are on your psychedelics. So. And you're tracking everything, your heart rate variability with your Oura Ring. So, we do what we do with, our current understanding. And as we go forward with these experimentations, we are kind of creating a completely new human in the process. But even, interest in light and photobiomodulation, look at the number of publications in that space. So this data here shows PubMed articles about that. Actually it's reaching to like 4,000 now. And our friend Vladimir Heiskanen from Finland has done extensive database about the journal rank, the applications from animal studies and human studies of what these different light frequencies do to our biology. And we have Vialight here also. So I encourage you all to check it out. But, as much as we have discussion about things like light and light hygiene through our mobile devices and blue light blocker and glasses and all of that, it's good to remember where we come from, because all of those actually come back to the very basics. I can do all the biohacks in a city environment, but from my data, I see that if I'm in nature, at my cottage, with my sauna and my lake and nature walks, I don't need any of this crap. I don't need any of that. I just recover just much more quickly. And I feel really great.
Yeah, those are basically the things I'm missing here in Canada while living, or not living, but having a presentation under artificial lights in the darkness, having huge buildings, not enough nature. So I'm missing the sauna, I'm missing the cold exposure, water contact, fresh air, and also like just movement in the nature. So we need that. That's like the basic thing. The most simple biohack is to get some sunlight or sun gaze just through your eyes. So it's basically regulating all your systems, all your circadian rhythms through the eyes with the light, with the natural light.
Yeah, I think there's always a price if we, for example, come to city and exchange all the benefits that we get in the city, which are tremendous. But there is a price for that. There is a biological price. And I think that goes back to the idea that whether it was nootropics, this and that, it might kind of enhance certain things, but we also need to pay it back at some point. So the balance thing is one of those ideas that kind of makes me smile, because most of the biohacks are actually, first we create the problem by kind of technology, then we have technological solution for that, and it's all just environmental problem in a sense that, as you said, if we just go back to the nature, you don't need that stuff.
We are pretty much adjusted to the cycles of nature and what's going on there, and that's the adaptation that comes through evolution. Maybe in the future we adapt, this crazy city life, like maybe a few generations down the road, you get the epigenetic change, that this becomes a more natural environment than going into a forest. Because it's already kind of happening. When people go to a forest, I think it was you, Jaakko, who said that it's like often people camp up, they have a lot of gear, they look like astronauts when they go camping, but you don't really need anything. You can just go naked in the forest. Maybe you get arrested, but anyway. So, the circadian biology, big thing in biohacking, timing, diets, exercise, understanding, light exposure, all of those things. Yeah. It's really kind of like just studying, these natural cycles and how you time these things. And that also comes back to longevity.
Yeah. So according to various researches, the best way to tune in to your clock, to your natural circadian rhythm, is just to go into nature without any technology, just spend many nights in the nature. You're actually gonna sleep more. So there's this research that those people who went into nature without any technology, without any Wi-Fi, without any magnetic resonance or so on, they actually slept like 9 hours per night. So you might wonder if 6 hours, 7 hours is enough. Is it natural? It's probably due to artificial light, artificial electricity and so on. That's diminishing the normal patterns that are inside us if we go just into nature.
So nature is kind of tuning our different regulatory mechanisms, different compensatory mechanisms that lead to homeostasis, lead to a natural balance of feeding patterns and body temperature fluctuations and rest versus activity patterns and rhythms. But we are kind of, nowadays we think it's all about, I'm just going to skip this. It's all about better, faster, stronger. It's all about kicking ass. It's all about, more is more. But it's not. We all know it. It's not like putting more and, more neural enhancement and, more focus and attention, somehow, channeling that to your work, that is going to result in a better human. You're just burning the candle from both ends.
There's always the price to pay. It's called borrowed energy. We have a certain capacity for energy. Of course, we can make things that our energy system, our energy production is optimized, but there are certain limits. For example, in these kind of conferences, I don't feel bad if I sleep like 6 hours, 7 hours. I can go on days, but eventually, if I kept doing that, the payback time would come. So you want to recover whenever you can. You have to really do different kind of things during the day to get enough recovery if you're not sleeping enough, especially if you're not sleeping enough.
Yeah, and this boils down to also kind of a different philosophy towards, for example, how do we get the energy? And this is kind of the classic model from, after the Second World War in Russia, there was this doctor called Nikolai Lazarov, who basically got a mission to find out all the chemicals and old herbal products and all that can affect the soldiers' ability to march and, build stress resilience. and they coined the term adaptogens. And this is old idea. In Ayurvedic medicine, they call them rasayanas or tonic herbs in Chinese medicine. So these are kind of overlapping ideas. But in every kind of medicine wheel in this planet, there are 10 to 20 things that are kind of at the higher octave. And I think these are things that in the long run teach our bodies how to actually adapt better to the environmental stressors. And that's why they produce different chemistry. So this is a great example that the Lazarov, the Russian or the doctor, kind of came back from all the stimulants, amphetamines and that kind of things, and went back to Schisandra, rhodiola and eleuthero and stuff of that nature, because you didn't get the crash, but you don't get the kind of espresso pickup either. They take a little bit more time to kind of teach your system. So
how many have used, sorry, how many have used adaptogenic herb or herbs today? Nice.
Well,
how many have
educated
used stimulants today? But so it's good to balance
How
both.
many have used psychedelics today?
All right, a few courage ones.
Okay, so the effectiveness of adaptogens have been recognized, and definitely you see it in Russian literature. It's now being translated to English, and it's kind of picking up in the Western world. You see it in all these nootropic blends. It's all adaptogens, really. It's all modulating not just our immune systems, but our stress response and our HPA axis and nervous system.
Yeah, and I think it's again that, of course, there are many plants, for example, who are very interesting for specific reasons or kind of specific links in our bodies. But these types of kind of master plants are like Swiss Army knives. They have many moves on a chessboard. So in that sense, I think that if we want to add in some things from plant kingdom or from mushroom kingdom, those would be kind of the first picks because they carry the intelligence of all the other things. And the mechanisms are pretty much just that we get small amounts of these smart chemicals that kind of hormetically stress our cells. And Olli can probably talk a little bit more, what are these hormetic stressors?
Well, hormesis as a concept is basically being driven from different plants on the basis of the level of toxicity. So in small amounts, they're actually creating this kind of hormetic response that's a stressor, but it makes your system more stronger. It makes your system stronger. But if you go too high with the dose, it's going to be toxic, and you're not going to get any benefits. You're going to get disadvantages to your health. So there's this like J-shaped curve on the benefits. So you want to find a beneficial dose, whether it's exercise, whether it's sunbathing, cold exposure, or different chemicals in plants.
Or red light therapy or whatever you're doing. Too much something is not going to be good. I asked the question from Carhart Harris on LSD microdosing. If you do that every day, it might have some cardiac issues. You grow too much of cardiac valve tissues, and that might have a problem. So too much something is never good. Too much coffee, too much anything is not definitely, too much water is not going to be good for you. So it's about finding the right kind of equilibrium of stimulus that you want to go for. And I mean, as biohackers, we like to combine all of those things. So Olli has a lot of experience of doing everything at once.
This was set up.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the picture of a location where we write our books, and we do all these things obviously, and sometimes simultaneously. So that's how you learn. Just stacking things up, and then you have some kind of a compound effect. Now, in the end, it's all about the equilibrium, where opposing forces in all physical, chemical, and social, and technological, and biological systems are in balance. That's, I think, what biohacking really is. It's not like kicking ass all the time.
Yeah,
Definitely not.
You want to find your limits. If you're not going at least sometimes a little overboard, you cannot know what your limits are. In that way, you can also find your own equilibrium.
That's the true like natural homeostasis the whole universe is in, that it strives for it. I don't believe in the second or fourth law of thermodynamics.
Second law.
Second law. Yeah. So where is humanity going? You know, in Russia they are hiring neuroscientists to reverse engineer the brain, and they want to do by 2045, you know, full upload of our bodies into computers. And you know, the U.S. military has similar projects at DARPA, you know, reverse engineering brain function and creating not just the understanding of microbiome and all that, but connectome, you know, understand neural connections and how you can kind of make a copy of that and upload that somewhere and run that as a simulation. Some people believe we already are in a simulation, that this is created by, you know, this reality is created by a species of us somewhere much further in the future. That are the admins, the super operators of this, you know, reality we live in right now. Maybe we are, you know, giving birth to that with our work on all these transhumanist technologies and virtual reality and artificial intelligence stuff. You know, there is a lot of different fads out there about anti-aging genetic engineering that is, you know, happening right now. The things like regenerative medicine and, you know, seeking that eternal youth, you know, taking blood infusions from young people and, you know, giving that to the old, like Dracula. And cryonics, you know, preserving your body as ultimate treatment for terminal illness. So if you're in a terminal condition and there is no medical intervention, let's preserve your body and, you know, wait until we got medical advancements, and then we can, you know, go for it. We can resurrect you and fix your diabetes or Alzheimer's disease for good. Nanomedicine, you know, let's put some, you know, technology in our bodies. We started with vaccines, and, you know, we're going to put more advanced technology in our bloodstreams that are going to be zapping out all the cancer cells that are going to be in our bloodstreams. You know, maybe we, you know, create a replica of us, you know, an intelligence that is like us that's going to spread throughout the universe. I don't think it's a good idea to send humans to Mars. I think we should send, you know, some artificial intelligence that just, you know, creates itself, mines all the resources in Mars and sends itself to the next star. You know, some people want to live forever as a simulation and uploaded into a computer memory, like a brain in a jar. Or become cyborgs, you know, merging with their technologies. You know, all these things have been already discussed for, you know, hundreds of years in different philosophical and science fiction literature. Bruce Sterling in '85 split up, you know, a race in the race of future, that the world will be divided into two groups of people. There will be shapers, who are biohackers, a group that alters the body through genetic modification and specialized mental training, biofeedback and neurofeedback and all, you know, psychedelic, you know, nootropics. And then you have the mechanists, the quantified selfers, believe in information and data, and that group will modify the bodies through computer software and cybernetics and external alterations and prosthesis. They are the wireheads who live in a permanent virtual reality. Now, this is from your school book when you were young.
This was like, I don't know, 8th grade school book or something like that. I found it fascinating. The words are in Finnish, so I know that you all understand that. But the point being that when we're moving into the future, we are kind of creating the archetypical alien from our subconscious. I think this is kind of a picture for that. So we are losing muscle mass, our dental health is declining. There are many markers that we are not actually biologically enhancing ourselves as a species. And Daniel Vitalis coined this term of Homo sapiens domestico fragilis. I think it's a fine idea also to remember that as long as we are in this meat bag, we need to really take care of it and embody these things in a way that actually makes us more adaptable and not kind of more fragile for the things from the environment.
Yeah. There are, of course, things we cannot quantify, we cannot really measure, we don't even know exactly what is consciousness, what is a soul, if there is one, what's spirit, and what does happen to these things if we go into a cybernetic systems or cyborgs Can we actually move those as well? Can we live in another galaxy, another planetary system? Or do we eventually need this vehicle? Do we need a body? Is the next step only just being consciousness or some kind of fifth-dimensional, sixth-dimensional beings? Who knows? I don't know. After like 10, 20, 30 years, this might look totally different, this kind of conference.
As much as we are domesticating ourselves, you know, in the process we have domesticated everything in our environment, you know, plants, animals, you know, ourselves, our pets even, you know, look at the dogs, you know, that we have nowadays. They're far-fetched from their origins, you know. But when we think about ourselves, we probably don't think this version, or we don't think about this thing. But that's what we are ultimately creating, you know, with our scientific, you know, and you know, the modern ways of living is kind of, you know, we wake up with our phones and we are just, you know, on Snapchat all the time, and it's far-fetched from the animal that was able to hunt for its own food and, you know, survive in nature. And same with our dogs, you know, they don't need, you know, any of that capability anymore that they had originally, because, you know, there's an endless source of food for them. And, you know, that's kind of what it really boils down to. Also in terms of ethics of doing all this biohacking, because we are in control. We are moving from evolution by natural selection to evolution by intelligent design, where we can influence a lot our future. And it's up to you, you know, what you want to create, what you want to become.
Yeah, that summarizes it pretty much, because now we are creating much more rapidly intelligence around us, and by that also intelligence in us. And that shapes the future of humanity and the whole planet. So I think it's a good reminder just to summarize that there are effects to all of the things that we do here.
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add, absolutely. So thank you very much.
Yeah.